Good morning, everybody. After that stirring and uplifting presentation from our visitors from Beijing, it's appropriate to talk now about professional services, and it's a privilege of mine personally to represent the SWEETT group this morning, having been involved in the commencement of the business in Australia 26 years ago, and right from the outset, having been a personal believer in, passionately, in the fact that for an Australian services business, professional services business, to be successful, we really needed to engage beyond just Australia's borders and be involved in the broader Asia-Pacific region, of which, of course, Australia is a part. Now, I'm a bit in fear and trepidation of this thing. It looks more like like I'm about to play computer games or something like that. But I might try that. Thank you. As I said, it is a fitting segue or a fitting follow-on from the presentation by our friends from Beijing, talking about the International Fair for Services in Beijing later this year, because professional services or the services economy in Australia is playing a far more significant role as we transfer from a long time ago being primarily a manufacturing-based economy into more and more a services-based. And as other countries develop, similarly follow a development path economically, then it's a natural transition. Increasingly, the bilateral trade relationship between Australia and China is becoming significant. And I'm not going to dwell on this because there's facts and statistics that have already been highlighted, but I think one of the really significant things is the element of this that demonstrates that it is a two-way. It is, in fact, a bilateral relationship. There's significant investment from China into Australia, and there's an increasingly significant level of investment from Australia into China. And this just speaks of the deepening economic cooperation that exists between the two countries, which are both key players in the Asia-Pacific region, and it talks about the strengthening commercial engagement. And out of that comes greater cultural and social understanding as we engage with each other and interact. I think apart from the statistics are what they are, but increasingly the significance of this is the fact that it's predicted that over the next decade that China will represent, or Asia-Pacific region rather, will represent about 60% of global GDP. And of course China is a very significant part of that. And we are, in Australia, are part of the Asia-Pacific region, and from a business perspective, if we intend to be key players, we can't ignore those sorts of facts. There is already mentioned this morning the fact that there is an Australian white paper being prepared by the Australian government at the moment under Ken Henry's leadership. That's due for release later in the year. The interesting thing I find about that is that whilst it's great to have that underway, and that will be something which we can all learn from, all of us who are involved in business within the region, it is nevertheless, we need to recognise that for a long time already, Australian businesses have been investing in China, and Chinese businesses have been investing in Australia. And I can say that as a business that started exploring opportunities in Asia and China over 20 years ago, that this is long overdue. And it is not easy for businesses to to enter the market. And so it's great to have this investment, but it's long overdue, and but we do look forward to the outcomes from it. So because of those strong economic ties and the growth in business relationships, it's a natural progression that Australian businesses would be drawn to China and that Chinese businesses would be drawn to Australia. China's economic growth predicted to be somewhere in the 8 to 12% range over the next few years, notwithstanding the dampening of the economy at the moment, means that it is a strong growth platform for business and a strong growth engine for the global economy, including Australia. Of course, Australia provides a natural opportunity too as a source for Chinese investment and economic interest here, primarily relating to resources and commodities, but also some of the things that don't attract the same level of newspaper headlines are the areas such as hospitality, leisure, hotels, infrastructure, and other major property asset classes such as retail and commercial. It just means that the trade and investment flows, whether it be manufacturing or professional services, are very strong. And of course, as you get an increase in those activity in those areas, the result really is that it draws naturally professional services into along behind it. As far as SWEETT Group is concerned, and I am reminded that I need to be short and sweet in relation to this, and there is a pun intended, in this presentation. SWEETT Group is part of a global organisation. It's a public listed business in the UK, but SWEETT Group in Australia is really a result of or a blending of what a business that was commenced as Burns Bridge in Australia as its strategic advisors and project managers in 1986 with Padgham, who were quantity surveyors and cost managers who commenced in Australia in 1964. So we've been around this part of the world for a long time and then blended with the SWEETT Group in China through the Widnall organisation there to be part of the global SWEETT Group and offering jointly or the blending of services in strategic advisory, cost management and project management services. So we get involved in the preparation of the feasibility study or the business case or the project creation early in the piece and then get the opportunity to manage the project within the business case framework through its implementation. And we have about 600 people operating through the region. And the benefit of linking with a group such as Widnall in China to form the SWEETT Group is the fact that it's not just a matter of being global and hanging our shingle out and saying, hey, we're global, because you can operate separately and be global. What we're finding, and this is a very pragmatic approach, is that in order to drive the synergy or the benefits that come from that connectedness, it really means that we need to find ways of achieving the benefits that come through cooperation, drawing specific competencies from different areas, learning how to undertake a joint or a combined business development effort, and working with investors and developers and owners and operators that work right across the region. And some of those include, for example, groups who are major global operators who have businesses and investments in the Asia-Pacific region. It could be China-based operators and owners who have investments in Australia, areas where there are specific sectors that need inputs from joined together from different parts across the globe, or particularly across the Asia-Pacific region. So it's a matter of how we we make that work. But undeniably, one of the key benefits that we've discovered, as opposed to when we were just trying to operate on our own in Australia, in terms of achieving successful business outcomes in China in particular, is being able to be connected with a group on the ground who understand the local culture, who understand the language, who understand business norms in that culture, in that context, and it makes a massive difference in terms of the value proposition and ultimately the delivery on the ground. And of course the converse is true, that we're able to offer that to our clients in China. Just in conclusion, I've just put a couple of examples together of areas where we're working in specific sectors, because we find that when we work in a sector, it provides opportunity to transcend the geographical barriers and the traditional service silos in terms of being able to bring a total solution or a total package of, I was going to say suite of services to our clients. And this area is an interesting one because in China, I can assure you this is a burgeoning area of interest and activity with the ageing of the rapidly ageing of the population. In this particular case, we're working with a group that are Australian-based who currently provide high-end retirement and seniors living in Sydney, who have been in China for 2 to 3 years, who have now joined together with a local Beijing-based developer and are looking at delivering high-end seniors living and aged care accommodation around a number of second and third tier cities in China. And what we've been able to bring to them is an understanding through our local operation in China of the Chinese property market, of the local building conditions, of local cost conditions, as well as specialist knowledge of the area and of the sector, and importantly, what business model will make sense for them. But also because of the fact that we have existing clients in China through our Widnall office there, it's meant that another specific example in this area is where we have a major financial institution in China based in Beijing, who's a major client who is looking to embark in this area, and so that's been quite useful as well. Education is a sector that's had a fair exposure here this morning. There's an example where we've been working with an Australian-based university that's looking to develop a Asian presence, and so we're able to offer the similar sorts of things. As I said, there's leisure and there's other areas. I guess it's a bit of a show and tell, but it's also an opportunity for us to join with the Australia-China Business Council as part of this celebration of 40 years of engagement, and to see that as an opportunity, but to recognise the fact that there are still lots of challenges ahead of us. But the more that we engage with each other and pursue selected opportunities, the greater is the chance for success as we move forward together. Thank you.